the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Clint, how are you?
I'm excellent.
You know, we talk a lot about what's transitioned, in the last 5 years even, 10 to 15 years in particular, when it comes to what we see in terms of law enforcement online because of social media. And I wanted to talk about over-sanitizing the job, and I'll explain what that means. But I'm thinking back to how you and I used to grow up, and especially living in Southern California, I don't know what it is about our freeways, but one highlight for us after getting out of school on the 5 o'clock news used to be watching Pursuits live on television. And it would be the most detrimental thing whenever you would see injury take place during that, right? Like, Channel 7 News would just abruptly take the camera, and I remember them like flinging it across the screen so that you couldn't see the car crash, right? That's literally why we were all sitting there watching it. And since then, we have had so many times where that whole "we can't let the public see this" is starting to dwindle down, right? I don't know who does the rated R, but a lot of that is not any longer rated R anymore.
You know, it's really funny to think about, growing up and having, there was mothers against just certain TV shows. And I remember, growing up, The Simpsons was a big show that people just hated, or Ren and Stimpy, these cartoons that kids watch that people just didn't like. They were huge against them. And I remember with the FCC, they had such strict rules and regulations to what can be aired and would be aired on television, to where no curse words. And over this time, you've seen it progressively becoming more and more allowed to make it okay for people to watch that stuff.
When we see the whole war on law enforcement, I think it has to do a great deal with over-sanitizing this career. And so when the public only sees things like the headlines and not the human cost, it really reinforces their judgment and not their understanding. And what I mean by that is things like the social media outrage over one clip of one call without any kind of context or insight or the full 360 view.
Yeah, being able to spin it in such a way to where you get this really quick clip of just this violence that this officer committed on another person without any context leading up for it. Like I can easily go into any video and edit it to where it looks like this officer did something bad. But when you watch the complete thing, you're like, oh, they actually showed a lot of restraint while they're doing this.
Yeah, and as an officer and as a sergeant, I know that you have experienced this yourself, and I know that you've heard this from other officers as well, where somebody might say something like they have no idea what we actually deal with.
Yeah, being able to educate the public, and that's something I've always based a lot of my career on, is being able to educate people on truly of what we deal with and how we experience things to people that you can legitimately explain it to.
Yeah, because when you have this filter over everything, then it creates this element of feeling unseen and unsupported. And it also creates this emotional distance between you as a first responder and the community that you serve. And I think that a lot of times too, families struggle to understand what you actually carry. A lot of the times you're trying to protect your spouse or your kids from the truth of what's actually happening. But this also creates emotional walls and distance. And I'm so glad that, we broke through that at the onset of our marriage. And it's important to make sure that you're trying not to undermine the connection, because this is just going to breed isolation for you and for them.
Yeah, being able to, and we've been very fortunate to, grow up in the department together per se, and it's have those lines of communication, and a lot of that, I mean, that goes on to to you asking those questions and to supporting me and in that mission and being able to give that safe space for me to speak on.
Something else that I see happen, whether it's with the community or with your family, is that people might start to dismiss the value of sharing altogether. And it could be something like they just wouldn't get it. So why should I even bother? Why waste my time? And this silences those important stories that actually need to be told.
Yeah, being able to share those experiences, because like you said in the beginning, is if we keep sanitizing the version of our lives and of our work life and these experiences, then people will never have the full understanding of what we truly do, what we truly experience on a day in, day out basis.
I feel like as law enforcement, it either gets glamorized or demonized. There's nothing in the middle. And when that happens, things are rarely understood because the media has the media does a great job at either glorifying or tearing down the badge in particular. And so when that happens, it leaves very little room for all of the complexity and the reality of the work. It's almost like a coloring book, right? And you have what you see in the headlines and on social media, and that's the outline of the picture. But all of the crayons and markers and colored pencils that we need to be able to color everything in exists in the reality of the truths that I feel like are filtered all too often.
Yeah, and I think it's we as law enforcement specifically, and we're guilty of this, is everyone wants to hear the cool stories, the headlines of whatever event it may be. You're not going to sit there and talk about, well, I had 5 minutes of this instance and then an hour and a half of writing reports afterwards. But that is a dynamic that people don't truly think of. They want to hear the headlines. They want to know the realities of what happens in those crazy incidents, but they don't want to know about, well, now I have to articulate this and write a book on this incident.
Yeah, we get a thrill out of that shock value, right? That watching Channel 7 News to see the pursuit, hoping that we'll watch it crash. And so I think that there are a lot of ways to be able to share the truth without trauma dumping, to be able to normalize the elements that go into, more than just the report writing. And I think that it's important to tell stories that humanize your experience without sensationalizing it.
Yeah, and I think just as we do, and that's why I bring up the report writing too, is it is a huge factor in our job, but we have to articulate that incident into a story for our reports. Why aren't we sharing those same articulations to our family and to our friends?
It should not be that we're only seeing this take place in the courts. We need to use education as a bridge to empathy. So let's say that you have an OIS, right? And you have so many questions taking place. And a lot of agencies are getting a lot better when it comes to being able to, what's it called when they do it, like a community?
Like a coffee with a cop, or like
no,
a community?
Like an incident happens and then right away they make sure to go.
A press conference?
Yeah. Well, like that, but then they like releasing the body cam footage and, making it to where there are no secrets here. We have nothing to hide, and kind of getting ahead of those headlines. And I think that when you explain procedures and decisions, or even the emotional realities in ways that public can actually understand and see, then it helps to be able to bridge that gap.
Yeah, being able to, you're creating the dialogue, you're creating the story that's associated to it. And I think more and more departments are getting better and better about it, because they're seeing that dynamic shift with the media and how they're taking half truths and publishing it, where we're going to present the whole truth about what it is.
Something that we've done amazingly, that I know a lot of community members, myself included, have gravitated towards really being able to enjoy, is the presence of social media from law enforcement. Not long ago, and a great pause on it happened during the whole Floydpalooza bullshit, was that departments were afraid to post anything. And now, your department does a great job at this, where it's entertainment and also educational, to be able to see live in action these clips that are put together, to be able to see what officers are doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and it's being able to tell that story from the administrative side and the legal side, to not only show the video, but to explain and break it down from point A to point Z, instead of just grabbing that little piece in the middle where you see H and I, and that's all you see.
The truth is that the more that you sanitize the job, and this can go with any career, I feel like the more misunderstood you become.
Yeah, because you're not being transparent. You're not pushing out the true realities behind what we do.
I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.